introduction. Forgive me, I'll be addressing you in English, but I'm informed reliably that there will be translation simultaneously. It's a pleasure to be here, and I thank the hosts for inviting me to address you today. And I want to speak about what we're witnessing going on across the globe at the moment. The attacks that have hit this very city here in Paris, that most recently have hit Brussels, but beyond those two cities, have hit most countries across the world at one time or another. Now, as you've just heard in the introduction, these attacks don't stand in isolation, but rather they are the result and the product of a network of people who are working across borders to both coordinate on an operational level, but also intellectually, ideologically, to spread their ideas. And for decades, this ideology, this theocratic ideology that seeks to impose a version of Islam over society, has been festering and metastasizing on the grassroots within Muslim majority societies and within Muslim communities where they are a minority. And the situation has reached a stage where I now diagnose the problem as one of a fully blown global jihadist insurgency. This global jihadist insurgency has sparked civil wars in countries such as Afghanistan, a civil war in Syria, has bitten off chunks of Iraq, has taken off masses of land in Libya under its control, and has seen, as a result of it being waged across the world, multiple attacks in Western and non-Western cities. And this is why I call it a global jihadist insurgency. It is about time we recognize what we are facing. This is not the product of simply of a terrorist organization seeking to successfully plant a few bombs here and there. It would never have been so prolific if it was merely the product of one terrorist organization seeking to plant bombs here and there. But rather, this is a global jihadist insurgency, and like all insurgencies, it cannot survive. It would not have reached this far if not for a residual level of support within the communities that it seeks to recruit from. That doesn't mean all Muslims support terrorism, but it certainly does mean that a significant enough proportion of people within the grassroots of these communities have adopted this ideology and are prepared to die in pursuit of realizing its aims. This ideology, I call it Islamism, as distinct from my own religion, Islam. Islam is a religion like any other, but Islamism is the desire to impose any version of Islam over society anywhere. And in that sense, by that definition, Islamism is a thoroughly modern ideology. And the use of force to spread Islamism, I call jihadism, and hence the term global jihadist insurgency. Just in the month of March alone, Belgium wasn't the only city that faced such attacks. But we know that Turkey was attacked, that Pakistan was attacked no less than 3 times, that Mali was attacked, Nigeria, the Ivory Coast, and the football stadium in Iraq. And that was just in 1 month. We can no longer afford to deny that we're facing this global jihadist insurgency. But also, in its nature and scale, it is unprecedented. Because all of those wars that we have faced in the past have been waged by states. Even the Cold War, in the form of the Soviet Union, was led by a state. But here, we have a global jihadist insurgency led by non-state actors. In the plural, not even a singular. Groups that are either loosely affiliated or in competition with each other, nevertheless share a common goal, and that is to enforce a version of Islam over society, and the violent ones from amongst them to use force to do so. But even those that are non-violent, They share the overall goal of enforcing a version of my own religion over people, whether by law or by force. All of these groups that participate in this jihadist insurgency are offshoots either of Al-Qaeda or of the Taliban. That includes ISIS, which is in its essence an offshoot from Al-Qaeda. And those two organizations, Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, are in themselves offshoots from Islamist organizations that may not use terrorism to achieve their ends, but still believe in that core message of enforcing a version of Islam over society. And for too long, we have been in denial as to the nature of this insurgency. For too long, we have oscillated between the two extremes of the pendulum swing, between those who want to blame all of Islam and all Muslims in origin for being unable, unwilling, incapable of integrating to secular, liberal, democratic norms, and between those who wish to bury their heads in the sand and pretend there is no such problem and that everything can be blamed and pinpointed on George Bush and his neoconservative years. But as with most things, the truth is somewhere in the middle. The ideology of Islamism you often hear, in particular immediately after an attack, voices in the media that either declare that this is the result of Islam or this is nothing to do with Islam. Of course, the truth is staring at us in the face. It's rather obvious that this isn't Islam per se. This isn't in essence Islam. If it were, you'd have 1.5 billion members of Al-Qaeda or ISIS today. But it's also obvious that it's unproductive, in fact counterproductive, to deny that this has something to do with Islam. And so it's not that this is Islam and it's not that this has nothing to do with Islam. The truth is it has something to do with Islam. And that something is in the way in which this religion is used, quoted and cited by those who seek to enforce it on others over society. And we must recognize this, because if my diagnosis is correct, that this is a global jihadist insurgency, then the way to defeat an insurgency is by undermining its support base within the communities. And you cannot undermine the support base of an insurgency without challenging its brand and what it stands for, and without divorcing it from its message. And that is why both the approach of the neoconservative years and those of President Obama afterwards, I would say, have been incorrect. Thank you. I must find that lady afterwards who clapped alone and just pass her the bribes. But both the approach of the neoconservative years and those of Obama's years have been incorrect. Because if I could caricature the approach of George Bush and his neoconservative years, then it was an attempt to impose democracy at the barrel of a gun. That admittedly is a caricature. Nevertheless, for a 10-minute speech, it works. If I were to caricature President Obama's years, then what we liberals, and I speak as one, as a liberal, what we liberals have shied away from is entering in the realm of ideas and debating ideas, in recognizing this ideology and in isolating it from the religion of Islam. We have been petrified of being politically incorrect. So what President Obama did, ironically, from the fear, what US liberals, what Western liberals have done from the fear of appearing politically incorrect, is they have in fact become more neoconservative than the neoconservatives themselves. The facts demonstrate this. It was President Obama's White House that developed a kill list that allowed for the first time in history the President of the United States to assassinate people without any accountability, including American citizens. It was under Obama's White House that drone strikes increased at a rate far higher than President Bush ever launched. And yet we liberals were complaining of those neoconservative years. The truth is that because we were too petrified to discuss ideas, when I said that Bush's presidency could be caricatured as the attempt to impose democracy at the barrel of a gun, Obama's presidency ditched the democracy and kept the gun, in fact turned it into a tank. What we need to do instead is focus on the ideas themselves. If this is truly an insurgency, then the only way through it is to challenge those ideas and to galvanize civil society in that pursuit. We cannot shoot our way out of this problem. We cannot arrest our way out of this problem. The means of law and war, though they have their place, will not be the solution to this problem. But instead, the true solution is that we need to start working on the communities to have those difficult conversations about the nature of the Islamist ideology, the threat that it poses, first and foremost, to Muslim minority communities themselves, who are the first to fall prey to the bullying and the intimidation and the victimization that is imposed upon them by the Islamists. And so those arguments and those debates need to be had on the grassroots. And until and unless we do so, what is happening is that the social contract that binds us all, left-wing and right-wing, in our societies is being chipped away at, is being eaten away by those who aren't concerned about whether we wage higher taxes or lower taxes, who aren't concerned about whether our state is too centralized or decentralized. What they are concerned about is in refuting the fundamental values, those civilizational values that bind us together, whether we are left-wing or right-wing. That's known as our social contract. Our liberal, secular, democratic social contract is under assault. And I know that. I subscribed to this very ideology I'm now warning against. For 13 years, I was on the leadership of Hizb ut-Tahrir, attacking that social contract within the heart of Muslim communities. And so what we really need to do is this debate must become above party politics. We need to be working within communities to reinforce the democratic social contract for all of our citizens and all of our residents. And that means that all of us together are responsible. So just as you don't need to be gay to challenge homophobia, just as you don't need to be black to challenge racism, you don't need to be Muslim to challenge theocracy. You don't need to be Muslim to challenge theocracy. This is all of our responsibility together in society. So any rhetoric that seeks to do exactly as ISIS or Daesh do, when they define people primarily by their religious identity, when you see me first and foremost, do you see a British citizen or do you see a Muslim from Britain? That is the framework that ISIS seeks to impose upon everybody. Rather, we should reject that framework. Donald Trump should reject that framework. And instead, what we should do is engage through the foundation, the framework of citizenship, to reinforce the secular, democratic, social contract, to all stand together and challenge the theocratic extremism that has risen among us. And as I say that, I include, when I say all of us together, our fellow citizens who happen to be Muslim, who must pull their weight in this challenge as well if we are all to get out of this together. Thank you very much.